The universal and planetary rhythms keep us in movement, and if you can make use of them, instead of trying to resist them, then you get that energy that belongs with that phase, which can lead to a much deeper feeling of fulfillment in one's life. And then you don't need to say, I wasted time, and now doth time waste me. William Shakespeare.
More than 25 million men in the United States have transitioned into the zone, clueless, reckless, and in some cases, violent, suicidal, and even homicidal. It's a male crisis that men aren't even talking about, impacting our communities in a devastating way. It's the unspeakable passage fraught with shame, secrecy, and denial. It strikes the very core of what it means to be a man.
But I knew somewhere around my 35th birthday, I was feeling a different way. Whether I was experiencing things before that, I mean, I knew that I was experiencing things, but it concretely hit me on my 35th birthday. I pretty much woke up depressed, and that depression lasted with me for quite a while.
Because maybe 2 years before I met him, he told me about an experience that he had. He said he went on vacation to, I don't know if it was the Super Bowl, but one of the games in Florida. And while he was there, he just had this experience where he was supposed to go out that night, supposed to go clubbing with the rest of the guys, but he couldn't go, and he started crying. And he said he started crying and couldn't stop crying at all. And he said he couldn't tell me why he was crying, he couldn't tell anybody why he was crying, but he couldn't stop. And so he called his mom, and his mom kind of gave him an explanation, maybe this is God calling you or whatever, but he said something changed about him that day. Like before that actually happened to him, he was the ladies' man, he was pretty successful, so he ran through women and did a lot of partying and did a lot of what he wanted to do, but something happened that day that changed him.
Can't come in here. This is a patient's private session.
You know me?
Yes.
No, you don't.
Okay.
You see my picture in the paper?
Yes.
No, you didn't.
In the popular feature film, Analyze This, we see a comedy about a psychotherapist whose number one patient is an insecure mob boss and is exhibiting very uncharacteristic behavior.
I couldn't do it last night.
Do you mean sexually?
No, I mean for the big game against Michigan State.
Of course, sexually.
Similar to men who have entered the zone of andropause. Dr. Tim Morley, Manhattan biological hormone expert.
Most men are not aware of andropause. It's not really talked about in society. It's a term that really people don't even like to talk about. A lot of times, when you even mention it, people say, well, what is that? And it's essentially, what it is really, it's essentially the male equivalent of menopause for females. There are differences. With women, it happens oftentimes a little bit more quickly. It can happen over just a span of a few years when they're fine, and then all of a sudden, a couple years later, you're going through menopause. In men, testosterone dips oftentimes only about 2% a year, starting in maybe your late 30s or 40s. So it comes on slowly. So by the time you're in your 50s, then you're starting to notice some of the symptoms.
So what do we know about this phenomenon known as andropause?
Andropause essentially is a hormone imbalance. And when I say a hormone imbalance, basically by definition, andropause is a situation where a man's testosterone over time starts to decrease, to decline. And then, by the time you're in your 50s, it starts usually in their 40s. By the time you're in their 50s, that's when they start to have some of the symptoms.
I was fussy, I was ornery. I couldn't find the proper words to say at this time how I really, really felt, except I knew I was going through some emotional changes. And that emotional change carried over and spilled over into my family life.
Not feeling good, low energy, down too, because at this point in time, I mean, I wanted to be a father, and I found out that I couldn't have children. So a lot of emotional stuff going on at the same time.
We spoke with Michael Bieber and Patrick Breen, clients of the Body Logic MD.
I knew really nothing about it, and how I found out about it was I had a counterpart, a coworker, that I was doing a ride-along with, and he's very healthy, works out all the time, has more energy than you can imagine, and I'm in the passenger seat asking to get my 20th cup of coffee for the day, whatever it may be. And he looked at me and said, "Are you serious? You really need to get another cup of coffee? You know, what's going on with you?" And I said, well, nothing, kind of thinking I'm feeling guilty about getting another cup of coffee. And he said, have you ever had your testosterone checked? And I kind of looked at him thinking, that's kind of a weird thing to say to somebody, but no, I haven't. And he said, you might have low T. And no idea what low T was. And I said, well, what's low T? And he said, that's it, low testosterone. And
yes, I think that education is key to this. I think that talking about it, letting men know that what they're feeling and what they're experiencing is actually a normal condition, and pretty much every man is going to go through it.
I also think the term andropause itself is a way of trying to increase awareness. That is a far more acceptable term than male hypogonadism. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to be diagnosed as male hypogonadal.
You know, I think the take-home message here is that, number one, realize the symptoms of andropause, educate yourself as to what they are. Don't deny that it exists. I think that denial is a problem. I think that men tend to want to be macho and just deny it and say, oh, I'm going to man up and handle these issues. It's really not the best way to do this. The take-home message is educate yourself and seek help.
I just think that, I kind of think I'm just beginning, you know? I have a lot of things that I'm going to do yet. I mean, will they be all the physical accomplishments maybe I did before? No, I don't know, you know? You gotta be realistic, you know? I mean, the body is a little different than it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago, but the mind has plenty of possibilities to grow and expand.
It's the beginning of a second adulthood, a time to reposition and arrive at a new place.